Hello and welcome to one of my many stress-free art sessions. I'm your host BaTo and I will be teaching you how to create art. For this session you can use a tablet to draw or a pencil and paper. I'm using an iPad and a free app called Sketchbook to draw and paint in this and future sessions. Before we start watercoloring a landscape, I would like to go over a session with you guys, which is like an introduction to the basics of watercoloring, what's needed, and everything else. Here I have some brushes for watercoloring. I have wide, medium, and really narrow ones. You don't have to buy the most expensive brushes because they tend to get very expensive if you guys go to Michael's or anywhere else. So just for now, buy the cheap stuff. I wouldn't spend more than a couple of dollars on these things. Like as you can see, like this one I have is very old and brittle, but it works fine. As for the watercolors, I paid 99 cents for these, I believe. And again, for this exercise, this is fine. You don't have to buy anything expensive. I also always have clean water in a glass. It's crucial that you change water if it gets dirty. When you start mixing colors, especially then, your colors will get smudgy and they will look off. So always make sure your water is clean and clear. I always have paper towels next to me so I can dry my brushes and I can tap onto the surface of the paper. I usually cut them in small pieces so I don't waste as much. That's a really good tip. As for the paper, I have a watercolor hot press, I believe. So you guys, when you go to Michael's, you will have two choices: cold press and hot press watercolor paper. So really, cold press is the rough surfaced one, and the hot press is the smooth surfaced paper. One other tip, I like to organize myself, so I like to place my glass of water on the left side and my paint, watercolor paint, on my right side, and then up on top I like to place my paper towels. So there are two ways to work with watercolors. One of the technique is called wet on dry and wet on wet. The first technique I'm gonna show you guys is the wet on dry. So I'm wetting my brush in that glass of water and I'm gonna pick a blue color, a cool color, and I'm gonna slightly place it on the surface of the paper. I'm moving the brush in all the directions and I'm dabbing the brush on both sides. So the next thing I want to do, I want to actually clean my brush a little bit and dry it just a bit, just enough, and I would like to blend the edges of the blue. So the way to do it is by tapping it lightly and pretty much creating that transition between the blue and the clear, or rather white color. I'm constantly going between my glass of water and my paper towels with my brush, of course, and I'm trying to dry it or add more water, or even actually add more paint and try and blend these three elements. With watercolors, you always want to start with the lightest because again, you cannot go back if you make something too dark. The only way to go back is if you were to use a whiteout or something like that. You can always add water and that way, dilute it, but nevertheless, it's important to think about these things ahead of time and decide what's the best choice. Should I add more paint or more water? and experiment. Just keep adding water to your brush, keep adding water to the paper, and gently dab with the brush, and see what comes out. I'm going to blend some orange color, some warm color to kind of add a contrast. So I'm using the medium brush, and usually I use this brush to add a bit of details. I feel like I have more control with this brush, and it's great for trees, it's great for houses, cabins, or whatnot. And you can always use a piece of paper towel to kind of remove some of the color from the water color paper. So I'm just gonna add more. I'm just adding more water to the brush to kind of blend between the warm and cool color. So really, it's all about playing with the amounts of water and watercolor. The fine point brush is great for details, so I'm just gonna add some blue color, and I'm gonna play with lines and see what happens. And I highly recommend anybody who wants to get into watercolors to try and play with these lines. Also, it's a great exercise to see how straight you can draw. Also, adding circles and primitive shapes like circles, like squares and triangles, is a very helpful exercise. This exercise will help you understand how much you should mix of water with watercolors, and also the pressure sensitivity is going to play a big role in this. As you can see in that area where I'm drawing a circle, how wet on wet is working. So I'm applying the color and already the color is being blurred. The beauty with watercolors and the watercolor paper in general is this: you can use any liquid form. So for instance, I'm going to use coffee to color. I can also use any kind of drink like a Coke, like a tea. It also adds that natural color that you cannot find anywhere except in nature. So in this case, all I have to make sure that my brush is clean, and I'm just gonna dip it into coffee and start brushing. And you guys can do the same. So for this session, please exercise, play with different techniques, and I will see you next week. Thank you.